we are now experiencing the sharpest decline in more than a century. In countries like Spain and Switzerland, the average lifespan is 5 years longer than Americans, and the Canadians will outlive us by 3 years, despite significantly less healthcare costs per person. The US ranks 60th in average lifespan, and of course, first in healthcare spending. In the US, we spend $4.5 trillion annually on healthcare, with 90% of those expenditures on chronic and mental health conditions. For comparison, the food industry grosses $1.46 trillion, with 45% of that as gross profit. There is a 79% increase in early onset cancers for Americans under 50 and a drastic increase in heart and liver related diseases. 42% of adults and 20% of children are obese, compared to 5% in the 1960s. On Thursday, President Trump read findings of the MAHA Commission that show more than 40% of children have a chronic condition, and childhood cancer is soaring by over 50% since the 1970s. According to the CDC, 1 in 3 Americans aged 17 to 24 are ineligible to serve in the military due to their weight. This is now a national security problem. We hear these statistics and continue spending money to prescribe medications to treat chronic illness and obesity instead of combating the causes. Recent studies have shown the link between an increased ultra-processed foods diet and an increased risk of early mortality, and links to depression, obesity, type 2 diabetes, cancer, and cardiovascular disease. Ultra-processed foods are 73% of the US food supply and 52% cheaper than minimally processed alternatives, but that doesn't include the healthcare spending, lost productivity, and societal effects of disease. For those who have traveled abroad, you know that in many other countries, the food doesn't lead to weight gain or the same digestive issues that plague so many Americans. In other countries with socialized healthcare, they require rigorous testing to permit food additives because those governments know that they will pay for the long-term health consequences. If anyone has looked at our state and federal budgets lately, you'll see that we are also paying to treat chronic disease caused in part by our food in both Medicaid and Medicare. Currently, we don't permit food additives. Instead, for decades, we allow food manufacturers to self-report, to self-certify the safety of their food additives as generally recognized as safe or GRAS. It's a true situation of the fox guarding the henhouse. Some of these manufacturers also own pharmacies or want to become Medicaid providers so they can sell you the food and profit off the health conditions they cause, all on the taxpayer's dime. For decades, DC has been lobbied to prevent real change in our food system. As I'm sure you're all aware, the lobby has picked up and moved to Austin, and you've probably met them all right outside those doors. We should probably rename this bill the Lobby Employment Act of 2025. Entire associations have formed against this bill because Big Food doesn't want to inform consumers. Just like decades ago, Big Tobacco didn't want warning labels either. I'm sure you've all seen the opposition letter with tons of Big Food labels on it, simply fighting transparency. This truly is a David versus Goliath. This is about the average Texan in the grocery store wanting to make healthy choices against a multi-trillion-dollar industry. Members, we need to break the system and address chronic disease. Here's how this bill will help do that. Number 1, by establishing a nutrition advisory council with a focus on metabolic health, functional medicine, and chronic disease. Number 2, requiring daily PE and prohibits the removal of recess and PE for disciplinary reasons, and returns middle school PE to 3 years with a new exemption allowing for middle school opt-out of PE for out-of-school activities. Number 3, it updates health curriculum for K through 8 to include nutrition instruction and creates a high school elective in nutrition and wellness. Number 4, requiring updated nutrition training for all Texas physicians, PAs, nurses, dietitians, medical residents, and medical students. And number 5, as I'm sure you have all heard, requiring food labels to inform and empower consumers about certain ingredients not recommended for human consumption in other Western countries so that we can be informed about the food choices we are making. People assume because it's on a shelf in the grocery store that it's safe to eat. There is a drastic difference in what is produced to sell to Americans and what is sold in other countries by the exact same companies. Canadian cereals and British ketchup have entirely different ingredient lists than the American versions because other countries have determined that these products aren't safe to eat and are linked to chronic disease. Texans deserve to at least know what the products they're buying. Texans deserve to at least know that about the products that they're buying for their children. So manufacturers have a choice to label it or remove it. This bill is not a ban. They have complied with other countries' outright bans and warning labels on the very same products they sell to us here. I am proud to partner with Senator Kolkhorst to make Texas healthy again. Together, we are 2 moms on a mission who want Texas to lead the way for the nation on combating chronic disease. This is a bipartisan problem that needs a bipartisan solution, which is why this bill passed the Senate 31-0, with Democrats and Republicans giving emotional and moving speeches on the floor. Every single senator loved this bill. This is about the Maha parents and the crunchy granola parents coming together to say we are sick and tired of being sick and tired. This is Republicans and Democrats coming together for Texas kids. With this bill, Texas will lead the nation. Other states and the feds are looking to us to see Texas get this done and inspire positive change across the nation. I have personally spoken to the White House, who said they are looking to us, to Texas, to get this done, to stand for our children and our future.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Isaac, for what purpose?
does the lady yield for questions?
Yes, I yield.
The gentlelady yields for questions.
Representative Hall, would you agree that improving children's physical activity and nutrition is not just a health issue, but is also an educational and an economic one for our state?
Yes, I do agree with that.
Is it fair to say that many of our current health challenges, like childhood obesity and rising diabetes rates, are preventable through better habits established early in life?
Yes, exactly.
Does this bill help ensure that Texas students receive meaningful education in nutrition rather than relying solely on reactive treatment after disease has taken hold?
Yes, that is the entire goal. Yes.
Prevention.
Yes, prevention.
Would you agree that transparency in food labeling empowers parents and consumers to make better decisions for their families?
Absolutely. This is pro-consumer, transparency, and more information for Texans.
Are the nutrition guidelines developed under this bill based on scientific consensus and free from the industry influence?
Yes, and that is the entire goal of this bill.
Would you agree that training medical professionals in nutrition and metabolic health fills a major gap in how we currently approach chronic disease?
Yes, I would agree with that.
Are you aware that many countries, I believe you already said this, but, already ban or label some of the ingredients this bill targets, yet U.S. consumers often remain uninformed?
Yes, that is completely accurate. The food that the same manufacturers make for U.S. is very different than what they make for Canada, UK, etc.
Would you agree that a healthier Texas workforce starts with healthier Texas schools?
Absolutely, yes.
Would you also agree that this bill advances both personal responsibility and physical responsibility?
The gentlelady's time has expired. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Hull.
Chair recognizes Ms. Hull.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this amendment, we have made many changes to this bill already. We narrowed the health majors required to take the nutrition curriculum, changed the required high school course to an elective, created an exemption for middle school PE, created defined list of ingredients, removed items from the list, delayed the implementation 2 years, and required the labeling only of labels designed after 2027, so no products would be pulled from the shelves. This list currently has 52 items that is based on over 200 ingredients that HEB has created on their own select ingredients list, and concerning ingredients that they have removed from their line of products with the green check mark. Senator Kolkhorst took several amendments for HEB on the Senate floor. We made additional changes in the committee sub, and I am making several additional changes at their request and at the request of Bluebell and many others. This amendment addresses the infamous Section 9 of the bill, the labeling requirements. It clarifies that the bill is only required for items that are disclosed as an ingredient. For those who don't know, titanium dioxide, a whitening agent, isn't required to be disclosed in dairy products. It is a whitening agent that is used for low-fat dairy products. This is another example of a successful DC lobby effort. So titanium dioxide and any other products like pesticides that is not listed as an ingredient will not have to be labeled. It also explicitly exempts products with alcohol, prescription and over-the-counter drugs and dietary supplements, and pesticides or chemicals used in agriculture, which also wouldn't have to be disclosed as they aren't an ingredient. Finally, it removes ACE-K, aspartame, high fructose corn syrup, potassium sorbate, saccharin, and vanillin from the list. Let me be clear.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Gervin Hawkins, for what purpose?
would the gentleman yield for questions?
When I'm done.
Not at this time.
Let me be clear. These are still bad for your health, but the removal of these items comes from many meetings and conversations with stakeholders who still don't want the bill, but we are working with them anyway. I appreciate that Bluebell is already working to remove many of these ingredients from their products, and of course, HEB already doesn't include any of these in their select green check mark products.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Gervin Hawkins, for what purpose?
will the gentlelady yield for questions?
Yes.
The gentlelady yields for questions.
Thank you, Representative Hall. I'm glad to hear that your amendment fixed some of the challenges that our stores have shared with you. So when you say that you're working with it and through, are you postponing your bill, or you're saying that
No, my amendment is
Your
doing this, and then there's going to be 2 amendments to the amendment.
to work on this?
Yes.
So my question is, and I may have missed this, in doing this amendment and the bill, was your goal to create a more healthy eating environment?
Yes.
You know, the bill, would you agree that is wide-reaching?
Wide-reaching as far as the labeling.
The labeling, as well as, I mean, we're talking public schools, we're talking about grocery stores. I mean, there's just so many moving pieces. So to me, that's wide-reaching when you engage so many entities in one bill.
Okay.
And so the goal is to change the nutrition dynamics for the entire state of Texas?
Yes, the goal is to make Texas healthier and to be an example for the nation.
Do you believe, and you correct me if I'm wrong, that this isn't somewhat of an infringement on individuals who make their own selection and choices on how they want to eat and what they buy?
No, I don't at all. This is pro-transparency. This is more information. This is pro-consumer.
Thank you, Representative Hall, and I'll listen to the other amendments and see how we can continue to work with the stakeholders involved, because what we don't want to do is destroy anyone's business and or create such a burden or financial cost that the cost of food will continue to rise
That
because
is
of the
a pretty,
changes.
I have heard that, and that is one of the biggest lies from the lobby. This will not increase the price of food. This will not clear food from the shelves. That is a flat out lie that the lobby is spreading. They have until 2027. We have extended the runway for them to comply with the labeling requirements. If they don't ever change their label after 2027, then they do not have to. They are using they still know all of that, and they are still lying. The point is they change their label all the time. All the time.
Oh, so you said something that caught my attention here. So you're saying if they don't do it by 2027, they don't have to, or are there penalties associated?
No, correct. And that's the point, is Big Food is well aware of that. We extended the runway. They know this. They are still spreading the lies like you have heard and you just shared.
So, but if they're not up and running by 2027, is there any penalties?
No.
Okay. Thank you, Representative Hall, for answering my questions.
Thank you.
Does the gentlelady yield?
Ms. Harris-Davila, for what purpose?
Does the lady yield for
yes.
questions?
Gentlelady yields for questions.
Thank you. I just wanted to get some clarification. I know the labeling piece of this has garnered a lot of attention, but would you agree with me that if the ingredients are not in these foods, they wouldn't need to label them anyways?
That would be correct, which is why I appreciate the conversations that I know have been taking place with Bluebell, where they have said that they are already working to start removing some of these from their products.
And are you aware that a lot of manufacturers sell food in Europe and in the United States, but they have different formulas for what they sell in Europe or other countries than what they sell in the US? And so they actually already have better formulas without some of these ingredients already included in their business model. Would you agree with that?
Correct. They are perfectly capable of making the same product for the US, and they should.
And when we were working on our other Make Texas Healthy Again bill about banning certain ingredients in our school lunches, we had a conversation with some of these similar manufacturers, and they said that they were already working on changing these formulas for the United States, given what the federal government's push is to remove some of these ingredients. You're aware of that?
Yes, and I love to hear it.
And one other point that I'll add, and I don't know if you're aware of this, in our Healthy School Lunches bill, we require implementation by the 2026-2027 school year. And so some of these ingredients in your bill will be banned from those school lunches earlier than your implementation date in your own bill. Were you aware of that?
Yes.
So they will already be starting that work, and so even giving that runway to 2027, they'll already be able to have most of this implemented by that point, given other laws and potentially what the federal government might do between now and then.
Yep. Exactly.
And then another clarifying question, we heard some comments about how far-reaching this bill is, but I've read the bill. I think it's reasonable approaches to fixing what we're seeing going on in this country, especially when it comes to doctors learning more about nutrition and wellness. And can you speak a little bit more to how important that is to kind of righting the ship, making sure that doctors have that information? I mean, I've spoken with my own doctor, and they're sometimes surprised by what they don't know and what they weren't taught, and sometimes wish they were taught that. Can you speak to that a little bit more?
Yes, I mean, all of these chronic health conditions that are plaguing Americans, it would be the role that food has in our health is significant. And if more doctors and healthcare professionals were taught about that and could then tell their patients, it would be transformative.
And then just to go back to the labeling piece one more time, I think, and would you agree with me, that the existence of stores like Whole Foods and natural grocers that have all these other options are there for a reason? They're there because consumers want those choices. Would you agree with me on that?
Absolutely. I love natural grocers.
And that's what we're trying to provide. We're trying to provide transparency and what consumers want. Would you agree with that?
Yes. This is transparency. This is pro-consumer. This is information for Texans.
Thank you. I appreciate you answering my questions.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Goodwin, for what purpose?
will the gentlelady yield for a couple of questions?
Yes.
The gentlelady yields for questions.
Thank you, Representative Hull. I noticed that your amendment addresses pesticide chemicals, and I had an amendment as well. Does your amendment require the committee to examine the effects of harmful pesticides and chemicals used in the production or development of food on human health?
This bill is about ultra-processed food. So while I agree with what you are saying.
The gentlelady's time has expired. The following amendment to the amendment, the clerk will read the amendment to the amendment.
Amendment by Ashby.
The chair recognizes Mr. Ashby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker and members. First off, I want to I want to thank the bill author for working with me on this amendment to her amendment, which I believe is acceptable. What this amendment does is it strikes atrazine and glyphosate from the bill's warning label list. These two herbicides have been proven over and over again, not only by our country's EPA, but by over 50 other countries, as being completely safe and vital to crop production, food security, and weed control in each and every one of your lawns. And so, again, I believe it's acceptable to the author, and I move adoption.
The chair recognizes Ms. Hull. Mr. Wilson, for what purpose?
Yes, is Representative Ashby available for questions?
Always.
Gentleman yields
Happy
for
to yield
questions.
questions.
So, sir, if you could help me out here, and I appreciate you laying out the amendment.
Sure.
What does it hurt for people to know that these things are is in their food?
Well, again, what we're doing here is proving what is all we're doing is saying what has already been proven by science and studies both in this country and across the globe, and that is that these two herbicides are completely safe.
Sir, and I do appreciate that, but there's also science that says that they're not. And so, and I understand that there's concern about crop yield, but Texas State in their research, as well as others, has already identified that there are already alternatives to these two pesticides.
Well, the alternatives that I'm aware of, Representative Wilson, are actually used on less than 1% of cropland just in this country alone. And if I could, let me just mention one thing here. I mentioned earlier that not just in the USA, but in other countries, it's being used, and as I said, it's been approved from a safety aspect, from a health aspect, looking at carcinogens and other factors as being completely safe by our best scientists. And so, again, we're standing on that research that has been done with this amendment today.
And I do appreciate that, sir, but are you also aware that there's far more than 50 countries who say that it's not?
Well, that's actually not correct. Actually, I think most people would agree that Europe, the European Union, has the most stringent standards when it comes at looking at herbicides and pesticides. Yeah. And this has actually been approved in the European Union. And so I think when you look at the terms of the safety aspect of this, yeah. Again, just setting aside the efficacy issues, the facts lay out, I think, in what I'm presenting to you is that it is a completely safe herbicide.
Yeah. Well, sir, I appreciate that, but I beg to differ. And when you, sir, do you farm? Do you farm, sir?
I do.
Okay, sir, I do too. And do you know even ag agents are showing us the alternatives to pesticides? There is a place for pesticides, but when you look at the ones that you're suggesting, that there are alternatives that they're now teaching farmers to use so that they can get the crop yield that they're looking to, but also they're taking other things into consideration, our droughts and all those other sorts of stuff. And I appreciate the respectful debate here, but sure. We're talking about things that potentially are impacting our youth. When you look at ADD, ADHD, autoimmune, when you look across the board in terms of the population that's skyrocketing, that's costing us in public education on special 504 allotments and all those other sorts of stuff, it's just going through the roof. And so when you look to what President Trump is trying to do and RFK is trying to do in terms of trying to limit what is in and on our food, I know that this bill doesn't do that, but let me ask you, what's the harm for those who are conscious of it to be able to see it be it our code or a label or whatever that may be.
Well, I want to go back and address something you said, Representative Wilson. You talked about the risk to children. And again, there's nothing, zero evidence that either one of these herbicides relates whatsoever to what you just referenced in terms of ADHD or any other type of childhood disorder. But I would bring your attention to, again, the EPA, which is what we rely on in this country. In 2020, atrazine, and in 2022, glyphosate, they looked at specifically were there any impacts on child safety, child health, and again, they found no risk to these children if they're used at approved levels.
I do appreciate that, and realizing that we're talking about labeling, again, if it's no risk, then what's the harm of placing it on a label?
Well, I would, I guess, turn
So
the question.
I'm sorry, I don't mean to talk over you,
No, go
sir.
ahead, finish.
So that purchasers can be informed purchasers and consumers.
Yeah, so I understand that line of thought, and I appreciate what you're suggesting there. But again, if we already know that there is no safety risk, then why put it on there?
Well, simply because the President of the United States and others have made this a priority for us to understand what is happening to the quality of our food. And I think the state of Texas, standing by our president, should be looking forward to helping them in that endeavor in terms of the health of people. People basically could be healthy, can also have adverse reaction and so forth to any sort of ingredient. So I would say that if it ends up on a plant, that it should be considered a something label. And I do appreciate the dialogue, sir. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you for the questions.
Chair recognizes Ms. Hull to speak on the amendment to the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, atrazine and glyphosate aren't food ingredients, which is why I am accepting this. But they are banned in other countries because these pesticide and herbicide residues end up in our food. The amendment I just offered not only exempts chemicals in the agriculture industry, but it also stipulates the bill only applies to ingredients required to be disclosed in the ingredient list, which these are not. The ag industry knows this bill wouldn't affect them with my amendment, but they don't even want the words listed in the bill. I'm still going to accept this amendment anyway, because this bill is about food additives, not about the pesticides and herbicides that are in our food. Again, other countries have banned both of these. Atrazine is owned by a company that is a subsidiary of the Chinese government. Other states don't even allow it to be sprayed in their state. Our farmers don't want China to own our land, but are here advocating to spray the Chinese government's chemicals on it. Atrazine and glyphosate are toxic, and studies with no conflicts of interest show the health effects that the residue in our food has on our bodies. Because they are so toxic, instead of looking at the long-term effects, we have genetically modified our food to withstand more of this poison so that our food is harder to digest and causes further health effects. This is a conversation for another session. For now, I move adoption.
Chair recognizes Mr. Ashby to close on his amendment to the amendment.
Move adoption.
The question occurs on the adoption of the amendment to the amendment. The amendment to the amendment is acceptable to the amendment author. However, Mr. Lowe has requested a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Hull voting aye. Show Ms. Harris-Davila voting nay. Show Mr. Ashby voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? There being 99 ayes and 25 nays, the amendment to the amendment is adopted. The following amendment to the amendment, the clerk will read the amendment to the amendment.
Amendment by Busey.
Chair recognizes Mr. Busey.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, this is a simple cleanup amendment. The current amendment exempts products with a warning label issued by the Surgeon General. These warnings are not actually issued by the Surgeon General. They are issued by TTB. This corrects the amendment, changing the language referencing a warning with the recommendation by the U.S. Surgeon General. It is acceptable to the author, and I move adoption.
Mr. Busey sends up an amendment to the amendment. The amendment to the amendment is acceptable to the amendment author. However, the question is on the adoption of the amendment to the amendment. Mr. Lowe has requested a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Have all members voted? Show Ms. Hull voting aye. Have all members voted? There being 113 ayes and 19 nays, the amendment to the amendment is adopted. Chair recognizes Ms. Hull to close on the amendment as amended.
Move adoption.
Ms. Hull sends up an amendment as amended that is acceptable to the author. However, a record vote has been requested by Mr. Lowe. All those in favor vote aye. All those opposed vote nay. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Ms. Hull voting aye. Show Dr. Buckley voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? There being 128 ayes and 8 nays, the amendment is adopted. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.
Amendment by Buckley.
Chair recognizes Dr. Buckley.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, members. First of all, let me say that I appreciate the intent of this bill, and I certainly agree with most of it. But I can tell you that this amendment is necessary if we're going to maintain the ability for our young people to have educational options. What this amendment does is simply maintain current law that requires our middle school students to have 4 semesters of physical education. While certainly there are those that would say that 6 semesters is preferable, let's talk about the unintended consequences of that. And so if I'm a young person and I'm not involved in athletics, and I want to pursue fine arts, if I want to pursue a foreign language, I will often do so in the 8th grade so that I can bank those credits so when I attend high school, I have a clear pathway, whether it be for CTE, where I can have a coherent sequence to earn a credential of value. It will also open a pathway for advanced math and STEM pathways in some high schools. It also is necessary that a student have that ability if they're trying to attend a high school of choice, one that is a fine arts magnet school, one that is for STEM, one that's for healthcare. All these specialized high schools in Texas often require that a student have elective credits that count towards high school that they achieve in middle school. Now, there is an exemption, but the exemption only works if you're a student that can participate in an out-of-school day activity like travel ball. Let's think about so many of our students in Texas that play travel ball, and that's great. But there are many other students, especially those kids that may not have the resources that could participate outside of the school day. So what I ask is that you vote for this amendment. Let's keep it as we have it now in law, that we have four semesters of PE required. I believe that other parts of this bill will educate our kids better, will improve the food supply, will do the things that are necessary, but for their academic achievement, this is mind and body. Mind and body requires that we adopt this amendment to give more options to our middle school students.
Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Van Dever, for what purpose?
Will the gentleman yield for questions?
Absolutely.
Gentleman yields for questions.
Thank you. Chairman Buckley, thank you for bringing this amendment. You and I were both in this chamber a few sessions ago when we passed House Bill 3, is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And a major part of House Bill 3 was to extend career and technology to the 8th grade, is that correct?
That is correct.
Yeah, so would this bill as written without your amendment, would it have any impact on the implementation of that part of House Bill 3?
Absolutely. It creates a conflict, you know, and it takes an option off the table. And there's never been a more important time for young people to have that option. And that option is to complete this coherent sequence of courses that requires banking credit in the 8th grade so that you can receive that credential of value. And that was an important part of House Bill 3 in 2019. We have extremely strong programs in our public schools for this. And I believe, though well-intentioned, I think this bill and this section of the bill is very well-intentioned. It simply is in conflict with something that this body has supported and knows is very important for our students as far as achieving those levels of career and technical education, but also advanced courses that can lead them to dual credit and other things that we've also agreed are important.
And we also have a funding model now that rewards schools for students who complete a credential of value. Is that
That is correct. That is an outcome-based funding model that we have, and without this amendment, that funding model is in jeopardy because it takes that off the table for young people in 8th grade.
So if your amendment doesn't get on, it could actually lead to reduced funding for our local schools. Is that correct?
It certainly could.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Yeah, I move adoption.
Chair recognizes Ms. Hull to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, I love the fine arts, and I'm so glad that there's expanded CTE, but I also want healthy kids. And I know it was already talked about, so until 2017, PE was required for all 3 years of middle school. This is returning to 3 years. As I said in my layout, 1 in 3 Americans aged 17 to 24 are ineligible to serve in the military due to their weight. This is now a national security problem. I know Chair Buckley is in Killeen, so I know he understands that. This bill doesn't take away the ability for marching band or show choir or anything else that currently counts as PE to continue to count. The group that I think is behind all of this, because I don't know who exactly they are, because they have never talked to me, not once. If they had, I would have told them that in the committee substitute, we added a PE exemption for middle school so that parents can opt their kids out of PE for out-of-school activities, just like they currently can in high school. And I want to thank Representative Busey for bringing that suggestion. I thought that had addressed any possible concerns because only one person testified on that issue in the committee no one's ever contacted my office. Middle school PE is the first time most students learn to use gym equipment, how to develop a fitness routine, and learn lifelong skills. For many kids, this may be their only opportunity to learn those skills. Kids will still be able to participate in fine arts and CTE because they did before 2017, and there are multiple elective spots in a school schedule. I have a sample schedule here if anyone is interested. Kids will still have room for electives in PE under this bill, just like they always have. When these kids are adults, it would be great if they're still participating in community theater or making pottery, but at the end of the day, I really hope that they're staying active and using those lifelong gym skills. This group never came to talk to me. I only saw this amendment as of yesterday, and I believe in helping kids stay active and healthy. I'm going to leave this to the will of the House because I know everyone feels differently. I have to vote no because I believe in healthy kids, but members vote your district.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Patterson, for what purpose?
will the gentlelady yield for questions?
Yes.
Gentlelady yields for questions.
Thank you. Representative Holt, you mentioned that there was an exemption already in the bill now for extracurricular sports or activities that are done outside of the school hours. Can you speak a little bit more about that? I know Dr. Buckley mentioned travel ball, but I mean, I don't think that requires that you travel across the state or across the country to participate.
No, it could be anything. And this all came from Representative Busey, which I, again, very much appreciate him helping out with this. And like we had talked about, no one wants to harm fine arts or CTE. So the suggestion was to allow the same exemption that high school parents have to allow it for middle school as well.
So it could be participating in sports, let's say in your local community,
Yes.
could exempt you from the PE course.
Yes, so like my son plays ice hockey. That would count. I know another member, Dr. Oliverson, said his daughter is a ballerina. Those are all things that would count, that middle school parents would be able to opt out.
Okay, and then the group that brought this amendment forward, they want this amendment because it would increase CTE courses in middle school.
Yes, so, and Dr. Buckley did talk about that, and that's why I'm leaving it to the will of the House for members to vote their district. I know people feel differently about this.
Do school districts get paid more?
They do,
if their
yes.
students take CTE courses?
Yes.
Okay, so really, this is an exchange between keeping kids healthier by participating in PE more semesters And instead of doing that, they want the additional dollars that come with the CTE courses. Is that the way that you would, is that fair?
I guess it's fair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr. Van Dever, for what purpose?
would the gentlelady yield for a couple of questions?
Yes.
Gentlelady yields for
Thank you.
questions.
Thank you, Chair Hull. Thank you for this bill. I'm proud to be a joint author on this bill and work with you to make our kids healthier. But would you disagree with me if I said that it's really unfair? It's really unfair to say that schools are more interested in funding than in healthy kids. Was that a fair assessment?
I don't know. I think it would probably depend per person. I don't know.
Yeah. So have you been involved in, you mentioned your son, have you ever tried to get a waiver for PE from a local school?
No, I have not.
Okay. Would it surprise you to learn that schools apply this in different ways and have different standards?
Yes.
And that some schools might require that the child be in a really high-level gymnastics program to exempt them from their PE?
Again, the bill does not touch what is currently allowed or not allowed.
But is it accurate to say that the bill does include what's currently done? You included that exemption in your bill, is that correct?
Yes.
Because that exemption is not currently in place for middle school.
For
is that
middle
right?
schooler, right. High school parents have that. Middle school parents don't.
Okay. I'm just curious, do you not think that it could be a fairly high bar to clear for these middle school students to qualify for this exemption?
Well, I think people should talk to their school boards if they don't like the exemption policies.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. And again, thank you for bringing this bill.
Yes, and again, that's, members, I am leaving it to the will of the House. I know everyone feels differently about this, so everyone is free to vote your district.
Chair recognizes Dr. Buckley to close on his amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, first of all, I appreciate the dialogue back and forth and certainly appreciate the work that Chairwoman Hull has done on this bill. And overall, I think it's a good bill. But I also know, and I just want everyone to know, that the group that contacted me about this amendment, or that informs me, is a group of 3 children in my home that all participated and benefited from the flexibility in 8th grade, where they could then pursue, for my daughters, fine arts courses that would not have been available that way, and also because of that, were able to participate in a dual credit program, and my son, who was able to participate in CTE courses because of it. So it's about that. It's about mind and body. We can have both, and I believe this amendment does that, and I ask for your support on this amendment.
Mr. Speaker,
Ms. Gonzalez, for what purpose?
does the gentleman yield?
Does the gentleman yield for questions?
Absolutely.
Gentleman yields for questions.
Thank you, Chairman. I was also proudly on the HB3 conference committee where we're making some of these changes because I think we recognize that there are 5 million kids in our local public schools and over 1,000 school districts with different options for these kids. And so we were trying to allow for us to recognize the breadth of skills that these young people have. Does that feel accurate?
Yeah, absolutely. Our kids have, they need to be able to experience different things and try out different things. And that flexibility in the 8th grade year, you talk to local school folks, talk to your teachers and your principals. And that 8th grade year, that flexibility is crucial in a child finding their pathway to graduation, whether it be banking college credit hours or whether it be banking a credential of value. And so, there may be a time when we can rearrange the way we do school from 8th grade through 12th grade, but at this time it is important that we stay where we're at so we don't disrupt the really good things happening for our kids and the opportunities they have now.
And I do want to reframe something that was characterized that, is this about school districts getting money or is this about the health of the kids? And I don't think it's a binary. I think, in fact, healthy kids are happy kids who get to explore their futures. And when they don't have those opportunities, they are less even healthy. And so I want to push back on that narrative that this is about money and health. I don't think it's a binary. And I think just because the school finance formula will be impacted, does it mean that it's a binary? Can you help expand on that?
Absolutely. You know, there is nothing that creates a healthier child than finding their passion, that finding their way where they finally have decided. Everyone that has kids knows when they're little kids, they walk in, they're going to play in the MLB or the NFL. Then they're gonna, then they want to, be a police officer, and some do, and then they might want to be a teacher or a lawyer or a veterinarian or a doctor. But nothing really, you never see a child thrive until they really have unlocked that passion of what they want to do, and it changes them. And I believe those options available in the 8th grade are just pivotal. You think about the age of an 8th grader, and I think that's why this is so important. And then we talk about the money part. That is a part of it. But what we know is that we have created outcome bonuses because we know that's what the Texas economy needs, and that's what our children should be able to access. And though I think the intentions of this bill are outstanding, I think this is an unintended consequence, and I just want to try to correct that so that we still have great opportunity for young kids or young folks in Texas schools.
I appreciate your leadership, and I do appreciate the author's leadership in trying to make sure we have healthy kids, and I think your amendment does that too. So thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much. Members, I move adoption.
Dr. Buckley sends up an amendment. The amendment is not acceptable to the author. This is a record vote. The clerk will ring the bell. Show Dr. Buckley voting aye. Show Dr. Oliverson voting nay. Show Ms. Goodwin voting aye. Have all members voted? Have all members voted? There being 97 ayes and 36 nays, the amendment is adopted. The following amendment, the clerk will read the amendment.